Greetings, Earthlings. Oz here, coming at you from planetOZ, and in keeping with the theme of costuming, or poor man's costuming, as the case might better be, this is my outfit of somebody who lives off-grid, spends a lot of time outdoors, the Skeeter Duncans we deal with on planetOZ. I think you have these mosquitoes that are similar. But anyway, you deal with enough of that, you need a hat like this. And as it happens, in a few months, I am going to be disengaging from the fixed address, loft living, urban downtown lifestyle that has been my home for about 5 years now. And in a few months, I'm going to be getting into a schoolie, which, if you haven't seen one of these, it is a school bus converted into an RV. But I'm going to be getting into a schoolie, and that's going to be my address. And I will then be mobile and traveling all around to experience everything planetOZ has to offer. And I will be taking the planetOZ show on the road. So, should be an incredible, amazing adventure, and I hope you will all join me. So, costume, RV, outdoors, off-grid, schoolie living. Yeah, let's pull this up so it's not. All right, with that update, the topic of the discussion I wanted to get into today was the idea of what exactly do higher dimensional wars, politics, and joys look like. And this idea is born out of something really intuitive, and that if you're reading the integration of esoteric texts and materials that planetOZ ideas are built on, and you ask these big questions, then you might wonder, if life continues after the physical, what does it look like? What are we doing? What happens there? It's easy to puzzle over these things because in the physical material realm that we're all living in, it's the case that so much of our time and energy and thought is fueled into things that are very much innate to the physical realm that we're living in. In other words, you need food, you need water, you need shelter. You have to make sure these things are covered before you can really move on to anything leisurely or whatnot. And so, consequently, in competitive societies, it ends up being the case that a lot of the time and energy, perhaps for a lot of people, most, or even nearly all, goes into covering those basic things. So there's not any time or energy or anything even left to think about anything non-physical. It's just the physical providing for the physical, day in and day out. And so then you would think, what else is there? Well, once you have more leisure time, you can see value in what else there is out there, but you still might say, okay, well, maybe you retired after a long career and you invested a bunch of work in there, but, coming for me. But anyway, ultrasound? But anyway, a lot of times that it reads as a negative, and it's like it's slavery to a machine of working and providing for these basic needs just to work again. And so the flip side of that coin is when people would say, yeah, but that's the motivator. That's what drives us, the need to cover these things, to survive. That's what gets us up and gets us motivated. And there might be truth in all of this, but I think it goes deeper than that, at least according to one interpretation of integrated esoteric ideas, as we discuss in planetOZ, for you to take from what resonates with you. This idea is basically coming from the fact that, according to a lot of sources, including the law of one, the physical aspect of our existence is very short. It's a very small part. So actually, the vast majority of our lives are spent in the non-physical. And that begs for a model of what that looks like, or what it could look like. And here is at least one. And the foundation of it is based on the single infinite consciousness idea, or the grand idea that all of the cosmos, the entire universe, everything in our reality and all that we can observe is all happening within a single infinite creator mind, infinite source, or whatever term you want to use. But it's all taking place within this realm. So it is all consciousness experiencing consciousness. And when you trace this idea back and you look at how the logic of its origination works, it's essentially this idea that you have infinite awareness, and then in a desire to know itself and experience itself, this infinite awareness creates a something to observe and a perspective by which to observe it. And to do so requires reducing from the infinite to the finite and entertaining or experiencing, at the very least, an illusion of separateness to some degree. So you have to separate from the infinite and be finite in order to accomplish what the desired goal was, according to this idea. The one consciousness wants to experience something. And that makes logical sense. I think, like, if you're experiencing an absolute eternity of bliss, I don't know, would you not get bored? Would you not desire some adventure, or some company, or something to look at, something to interact with? And basically, from that idea, all things are created. And in that way, we are each an individual, one individual perspective, one point of view, but completely part of this whole, part and parcel, and our aspects of being finite, mortal, vulnerable, material, and imperfect. Those things are all illusory. Those are illusions, and our core truth is that we are infinite, immortal, invulnerable, luminous, and perfect. So so we're kind of this infinite experiencing and not being infinite. And part of that is this comes down when you vibrate it down to its slowest form, or at least the slowest for the purposes of this conversation. We are in the physical realm, and then we'll can at once speculate on what happens after and what we do and what that's all about, but we can also speculate on an aspect of this all where it's described as though this physical realm is a reflection of what is happening beyond us. It's a reflection of the non-physical. So in other words, we might think in our material-centric view that we are the engines, we are the free wills, we are the activators and agitators that vibrate this whole realm, and if there are non-physical, they would be experiencing the repercussions of that outwardly. But we are the ones who are steering the ship. This idea says, no, that's not the case. The ship is steering out there, and it's happening in the non-physical, and then those vibrations come down to finally arriving at an interference pattern, I guess you could say, of this material physical realm. And so we are the result. We are the reflection. We are the end of the line. But, when you look around, it doesn't really necessarily feel that way. It feels like we are operating on our own principles of motion, and we have our own agendas, and we have our wars and our politics and our joys, our pursuits of happiness and all of that stuff. It's almost minimizing to feel like we're just a reflection of something else. So what is that something else? Well, the idea would be that if there isn't really fights, let's start with wars. If there aren't really wars over geographic land masses, or wars over material resources, or wars over what all these things we have wars here in the material realm. If those things don't make sense, what would war be about? And the reason I started this interpretation with this infinite mind idea is because this original idea of separation would immediately logically be followed by the question, was that worth doing? Okay, well, I split my infiniteness into something that could be observed and something that would observe it. Was that a good experiment? Did I like it? Well, we can just tell by the virtue of how infinitely complex this realm has become, with a infinite number of lenses observing all of this. It just stands to reason. Obviously, the answer was yes. This was worth continuing in greater and greater complexity to infinity. So there is that original question to divide, to experience an illusion of separation, and then a question following right after it, presumably. I'm just intuitively presuming this, but that next question would be, was that experiment worth it? Yes, it was. But from there, we might expect that a somewhat eternal debate would then begin, in the sense that these individuations would then be asking themselves and each other, does it make sense now to return to the infinite that we came from? Do we go in that direction toward being infinite once more, or are we still most productive, learning at our best, or I guess doing the most for the learning and experiencing of this grand consciousness? Would it be better if we continued the pursuit and went deeper in the direction of separation and distancing? What if we made the veil even thicker? What if we were born into incarnations that had even less understanding and were hidden even deeper behind what they are? This is an endless debate and discussion that could be had, probably without any right answer. The decision to individuate and experience and have a dynamic universe makes every bit as much perfect sense as a decision to be at rest in perfect harmony. So anyway, we're experiencing the dynamic version, presumably. And so so then I kind of think, this is just a little bit of speculation here, but I think that these higher dimensional wars might be more accurately described as war games. I can't exactly be sure, but if all beings involved have at least some kind of sense of their immortal nature and their invulnerability in the grand scheme, and they don't really have physical bodies of each other to destroy anymore, to win a war of attrition, let's say, or physical hardware, it seems a little weird to me that this struggle would still play out in a bitter, ugly, hate-fueled or negative way as we see it here. Could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's worse up there. Maybe higher density, separate separating oriented individuals are more ruthless, and it's really hard to know. I don't know, but there was I don't want to get too far off track here, but there was a little part of the Law of One where I could be misremembering. This is just what I remember of it, but they were talking about like vehicles and stuff on some other planet, wreckage, war machines and stuff like that were just left in the sand or whatever, and there was a little bit more questioning about it, and it's said to some effect, it was said that basically this was the remnants of a thought war. So the Law of One covers so many topics. It didn't really go into a whole lot of depth with that, but man, I could read a whole book about what that would look like. But the thought war idea is interesting. It might kind of be the kind of thing that gives us an indication of what the stakes are. If the war is fought with thought, then thought is what is trying to be won. So when we see that reflection play out here, we see, for example, our political fights and our wars being related to land, wealth, rights, material resources, things like that. So, but a lot of the things, when you look at what people are actually fighting about, what the rhetoric is, many of these things can be distilled down to this idea that, do we desire separation or unification? And it can get really tricky because sometimes a group wants to unify within itself, and so it seems like unification, but they want to draw a clear line outside of that with everything else. And so I think the idea is that wherever one finds the line, one needs to keep removing the line and just keep moving the line endlessly outward toward unity for all time, if one is on the path back to the infinite. So anyway, these political battles and the wars that we see fighting out here can, in some sense, be distilled down to unity or separation. And the separation aspect can also manifest, and will often manifest, in things that are material, that we need to preserve our bodies at the expense of others, or our property at the expense of others, or people are coming to take our stuff, or that's kind of what it looks like. But at the end of the day, that would be a description of how the non-physical aspects of politics and war would slow their vibration down in the physical and manifest here for us in what we see as battles that seem like they're to a large extent about material, but the underlying truth is that it could be argued that it is a reflection, or certainly looks like a reflection of what would be the level of thinking one level above that, divide or unite, and then trickle down the logic from there into what we see playing out. But then also, what about the joys? And this aspect, I think, is a lot easier than the others because it's I think it's more intuitive. It's some of the best things in life are free, right? So some of us could say most of the best things. And if you really desired a minimal and simplistic or simple life, you can just reduce these material needs and things down further and further and further, and smaller and smaller and smaller. And what are you finding on the other side of that? Well, if you're consuming nature, as a lot of people do, or spending time with family and friends and loved ones and things like that, if you are learning and learning from other people and improving yourself, improving who you are. If you really think about it, probably like a lot of the time when you're improving yourself, how much of that time is really physical? Some of it, probably, but a lot of the energy, a lot of the work, a lot of what we do, we're improving the non-physical aspects of who we are, and those are not only doing their work here in the physical realm, but these exact same things will continue to be those things that we will be working on in the non-physical. Everything that is just as our physical and our incarnation and our ego is unique, so is that non-physical part about us. If we strip the non-physical aspect, we just rip it out of every single material person, you would still see that every non-physical person is still unique. So still unique, still changing in this endless process. Life, death, physical, non-physical, all of that. So anyway, that is higher dimensional wars, politics, and joys. This is Oz, signing off from planet Oz. Godspeed.